Russell Sattazahn entered World War II aboard a crowded civilian ship carrying more than 3,000 soldiers. They were issued brand new rifles, still coated in thick factory grease to prevent rust. Before firing their first shot, they had to painstakingly wipe that grease away, otherwise the weapons would not function. From that very moment, Russell understood that war does not begin with gunfire, but with silent, cold preparation. From England, he was transported to France, then quickly pushed straight to the front lines in the middle of the night. On a pitch-dark road cutting through the forest, a voice suddenly called out, "Halt! Who goes there?" It was the man who would become his foxhole buddy, a complete stranger, yet from that instant on their fates were bound together. Russell was informed that he was with the 1st Infantry Division, right at the very front line. The first battles came quickly and relentlessly. In early 1945, many of the towns they passed through offered almost no resistance. The German forces were exhausted, short on ammunition, short on leadership, and often surrendered as soon as American artillery began to fall. In some places, Russell and his comrades entered towns without firing a single shot. But that silence was only the calm before the storm. On March 24, everything changed. After moving through several towns without combat, they realized the Germans had deliberately withdrawn to buy time to dig in. The blocking position they now faced was one they were determined to hold at all costs, only about 45 miles from Berlin. The Germans were ready. Machine guns, heavy 88mm artillery, all trained directly on the open field the American troops would be forced to cross. Before the assault, the entire company gathered in a farmyard, trapped between a house and an open field. About 50 meters away, a German soldier lay concealed in a foxhole, occasionally popping up to fire at them. A sergeant said, "Keep him pinned down. I'll circle around and take him alive." He crawled forward under fire, then came back, signaling for them to stop shooting. When he was only about 20 meters from the formation, he suddenly collapsed. No one knew whether he had been hit by a sniper or a stray bullet. There was no time to think. The assault began. Russell charged forward with the others. German machine guns opened up. Artillery exploded all around them. About 50 meters ahead, he dove into a bomb crater for cover. Another soldier was already there. Russell looked around and realized he was trapped in the middle of a killing field. He said, "I can't stay here." The other man replied, "I'm staying." Russell stood up and ran. At that moment, he was the only man left out in the open field. He could clearly see the streams of machine gun fire sweeping past between his legs, yet not a single round hit him. He burst into the house ahead and ran straight down into the basement. Below, more than a dozen other American soldiers were taking shelter as 88mm shells screamed overhead. Russell had heard enough by then to tell the difference, which shells were passing by and which were going to land very close. The first shell exploded outside. He thought, that was close. Everyone crowded in, scrambling for cover. The second shell scored a direct hit on the room next door, a deafening blast. Russell felt his entire body go numb. He thought his face had been blown off. Blood was running down from beneath his nose. He took one more step and raised his hand and realized his right hand was gone. Only 2 fingers were left, hanging loosely. The first thought that crossed his mind was not about death. It was, "I'll never play baseball again." A medic and a first lieutenant happened to be in the basement. The medic was tending to another wounded man when the lieutenant shouted, "Leave him! This man needs you more." They bandaged the wound to stop the bleeding. The 2 dangling fingers were in the way. The lieutenant ordered them cut off. Russell doesn't remember what he said, but he knew there was nothing left to save. He lay in the basement all night, surrounded by the unrelenting sound of artillery. The next morning, he was carried out on a stretcher. During evacuation, the stretcher jolted loose from the frame of a Jeep when the vehicle hit a pothole. Russell grabbed onto the stretcher beside him and screamed in pain. Eventually, he was taken to a field hospital, then to a rear area hospital, where his right arm was amputated completely, about 4 inches above the wrist. Russell was fortunate in one respect. He had been a left-hander his entire life. After the war, he returned to the United States and worked for 34 years at the RCA factory. Whenever people called him a hero, he would shake his head. He said he had only done his duty. The real heroes, according to him, were those who never had the chance to come home and live an ordinary life.
Russell Sattazahn never considered himself a hero. He said only that he had done his duty, like millions of other soldiers who were sent to war at a very young age. Yet it is precisely that calm acceptance that makes his story feel so heavy. Because war does not need heroes, it only needs people willing to give up everything. The true heroes, in his words, are those who never came back. They never had the chance to tell their stories, never grew old, never lived a civilian life after the war. What Russell brought home was not glory, but memory, and those memories stayed with him for the rest of his life. This story is not meant to glorify war, but to remind us of its cost. Every medal, every victory, every line written in history is paid for with blood, with bodies, and with parts of lives that can never be reclaimed. We listen to stories like this not to honor violence, but to value peace and to never forget what human beings have had to endure to achieve it.